It was supposed to be just another television interview, nothing unusual, nothing too personal. The cameras were rolling, the audience was excited, and Can Yaman looked as confident as ever. He smiled at the lights, adjusted his suit jacket, and answered each question with calm precision. For years, people had seen him this way, poised, strong, untouchable. But that night, something unexpected happened. A simple question changed everything. The host leaned forward, smiling in that charming but slightly mischievous way only talk show hosts can. "Can," he said, "you've worked with so many talented people, but there's one name your fans never stop mentioning. Demet Özdemir. Do you ever think about those days?" In that instant, the air in the studio shifted. You could feel it, the tension, the sudden quiet, the invisible pause between heartbeats. Can's expression froze for half a second. His eyes dropped to the floor, then lifted again with a faint, fragile smile. He looked like a man who had just been taken back in time. He didn't speak for several seconds. The audience waited. The host waited. Everyone in the room could tell this wasn't going to be an ordinary answer. Finally, with a soft voice that carried more truth than any long explanation ever could, he said, "There are memories that never really leave you." That was it. One sentence. But it was enough to break the internet. Within minutes, clips of the moment began spreading across social media. TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, everywhere, fans replayed those few seconds over and over. Some cried. Some smiled. And some simply wrote, "He still feels it." The host tried to keep things light. "You mean good memories, I hope?" he teased. Can chuckled politely, but his eyes glistened. "Sometimes," he said, "the screen is the easiest place to hide what's real." Those words silenced the room. Even the host lowered his microphone, realizing this wasn't a moment for jokes anymore. Can's eyes were distant. Somewhere far from the studio, somewhere in the past. Everyone watching knew exactly where his thoughts had gone. Back to 2018. Back to the set of Kenzie Kuss. Back to when everything began. People still remember those days vividly. The laughter, the behind-the-scenes videos, the photos where they looked at each other like the rest of the world had disappeared. What they created together wasn't just a romantic comedy, it was a phenomenon. Their chemistry was so raw, so natural, that millions of fans across the world became convinced that what they were seeing on screen wasn't acting at all. And maybe it wasn't. Every story from the crew said the same thing, they were inseparable. During breaks, they'd stay together, laughing, whispering, exchanging looks that said more than words. Demet brought out a warmth in Can that fans had never seen before. She teased him, challenged him, softened him. And Can, usually reserved and serious, seemed completely different around her, lighter, freer, alive. But fame is a strange thing. The same spotlight that made them stars also burned everything around them. As Kenzie Kuss became an international success, the pressure grew unbearable. Every interview was about their real relationship. Every smile was turned into a headline. They were no longer two actors, they were public property. Can once said in an old interview, "When too many eyes are on something beautiful, it stops belonging to you." And perhaps that was what happened. The magic became too exposed. The line between reality and fiction blurred until it became impossible to protect what was real. After the series ended, so did whatever they had between them, at least publicly. Can left Turkey, chasing peace in Italy. Demet stayed, building her career and redefining herself away from the shadow of their story. Years passed. They both grew, evolved, and found new paths. But for the fans, that spark never died. No matter how many new roles or relationships came, the question remained, what really happened between Can and Demet? And that night, in that Italian TV studio, when her name was mentioned again, you could see the answer in his eyes. After the show, someone from the crew said he stayed seated for several minutes after the camera stopped. He thanked everyone, smiled politely, but there was a heaviness in his silence. One of the assistants asked softly, "Are you all right?" Can smiled and said, I just wasn't ready to hear her name tonight. The next morning, headlines exploded. Can Yaman speechless after question about Demet Özdemir. The moment that broke Can on live TV. Love that time couldn't erase. Fans around the world began rewatching old clips from her Kenzie cuss. They noticed every little detail again, the way he looked at her, how she smiled when he touched her hand, the pauses that weren't in the script. They shared old interviews where he'd said things like, Demet brings light to every room, or when she said, Can has the purest heart I know. It all felt alive again. In Turkey, entertainment programs replayed the Italian interview nonstop. Journalists debated whether his silence meant longing, regret, or closure. In Italy, TV hosts described it as the most genuine moment on live television this year. But for the fans, it was simple, they saw truth in his eyes, and truth doesn't need translation. Can didn't speak publicly for several days after that. When he finally broke his silence, he didn't deny anything. He simply wrote on Instagram, some questions don't need answers. Silence says enough. That single sentence reached millions. Comments poured in from around the world, people thanking him for his honesty, others begging for a reunion, and some reminding him that real love never dies. Meanwhile, Demet was in Istanbul, filming a new project. Reporters surrounded her as soon as she appeared in public. One of them asked, Did you see what Can said about you? She smiled softly, almost sadly, and replied, I saw. And I think we both said what needed to be said, even in silence. That short response broke hearts everywhere. 2 sentences, filled with years of emotion. Later that week, Can was spotted walking alone near the Tiber River in Rome. A fan approached him nervously, asking for a picture. As they posed, she said quietly, I hope one day you'll both find peace. Can smiled gently and said, We already did. Just not together. Those words spread across social media like wildfire. We already did, just not together. It was poetic. It was painful. It was real. But maybe that's what makes their story so unforgettable, it's real. It's not a perfect fairy tale with a happy ending. It's 2 people who met, connected, and changed each other forever. When asked in another Italian interview weeks later if he would ever work with Demet again, Can paused, smiled faintly, and said, If the story is right, why not? Some things deserve one more chance, even if just on screen. Fans around the world lost their minds. Tweets flooded timelines, Please, let it happen, one more project together, we need closure, the chemistry never died. But behind all the noise, there was a quiet understanding between them, one built on shared memories, mutual respect, and the kind of love that doesn't need constant explanation. Even now, when you look at how their lives have unfolded, you can still see traces of that connection. The way Can talks about growth, patience, and gratitude, it sounds like the lessons he learned from her. The way Demet speaks about understanding and emotional strength, it echoes what she once found in him. Maybe that's why their names never truly separated. Because what they shared wasn't just romance, it was transformation. Months after that viral interview, during a fan event, someone asked Can, What was the hardest question you've ever been asked? He smiled knowingly and said, The one I couldn't answer. The crowd laughed softly, but everyone knew what he meant. It wasn't the question that hurt, it was the flood of memories that came with it. The laughter on set, the stolen glances, the long days of filming when the line between acting and feeling blurred. The goodbye that came too soon. Sometimes, words fail because the heart is louder than the mouth. And that night, when he went speechless, the whole world heard the sound of everything he couldn't say. For fans who believe in destiny, that moment felt like a sign, not of rekindled love, but of unfinished peace. It reminded everyone that love doesn't have to return to exist. Sometimes it just stays, quietly, living in the spaces between 2 people who once meant everything to each other. Can Yaman's silence wasn't weakness. It was the most honest thing he'd ever done. Because when something is real, you don't need to prove it. You just feel it, even years later, even across continents, even in front of millions of people watching live. And maybe that's why the world was so moved. For a brief moment, the celebrity disappeared, and the man behind the fame stood there, eyes full of memories, unable to speak. It was love, raw, unfinished, eternal. The world was shocked. But the truth is, everyone who has ever loved deeply understood exactly what that silence meant. It was saying, I remember. I still care. I just can't go back. And that's why this moment will never fade, because sometimes, one question, one pause, and one unspoken answer are enough to tell the greatest love story of all. And yet, even months later, people still talk about that moment, the silence that said everything. In a world where celebrities often hide behind rehearsed answers and artificial smiles, Can Yaman's quiet pause felt raw, real, and unforgettable. Viewers replayed it countless times, analyzing the subtle tremor in his voice, the flicker in his eyes, the small breath he took before speaking. It wasn't performance. It was emotion. What made that night so powerful wasn't just nostalgia, it was truth. The kind of truth that only comes from love that was once real. Because everyone could see that something inside him shifted when Demet's name was spoken. He wasn't the actor anymore. He wasn't the superstar. He was just a man remembering the woman who once changed his world. A journalist later wrote, "It wasn't what he said, it was what he couldn't say." That's why the world stopped. And it's true. Sometimes, the things left unsaid carry the heaviest meaning. When fans look back at their story, they don't see just a celebrity romance. They see two souls who found each other at the right time but maybe in the wrong world. Fame, expectations, and distance tore them apart, but the connection never disappeared. Even now, their names seem to chase each other in headlines, interviews, and fan memories. Demet once said in a quiet interview, "Some people leave, but their energy never does." Maybe she was talking about him. Maybe that's why, when she smiled that night after reporters mentioned his name, her eyes glistened too. They might never reunite. They might never speak openly about what truly happened. But that's okay, because the beauty of their story lies in its mystery. It's in the glances, the pauses, the little things that everyone noticed but no one could explain. And that's why when that interviewer asked the question, that simple, innocent question, the world didn't just witness a celebrity getting emotional. They witnessed love, memory, and humanity collide in real time. It reminded people that even the strongest, most admired figures have someone who can still leave them speechless. That's the real story behind that moment, not gossip, not scandal, but truth. And sometimes, truth doesn't need to be shouted. It just needs to be felt. And on that night, when Can Yaman went silent, the whole world felt it.